All right, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk about the welterweight and the 154-pound division, and specifically something that the former manager for Terrence Crawford and the current promoter for Jaron Ennis had to say about what's going on with Jaron Ennis and Terrence Crawford, and also ERROL Spence. And I'm going to tell you, things are starting to add up. And I think we know now what the PBC is doing. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. Before I get into the video, make sure you hit that like button, share the video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you can be notified of when we release more videos. There's an article that came out in Boxing Scene today, and it quotes a former manager of Terrence Crawford and the current promoter of Jaron Ennis and what he thinks is going to happen in the 147-pound division. And that, along with what we saw this weekend at the Gary Russell Jr. fight with Showtime, I think is adding some clarity as into what we should be expecting to take place in the welterweight division over the next couple years. Now, first, what Cameron Dunkin said. Cameron Dunkin shared a story in this article about what he used to say about Terrence Crawford when he originally had signed Terrence Crawford, and Adrian Brawner was at 135 pounds at the same time, where Adrian Brawner was looking like he was hands down the best 135 pounder in the world. People asked Cameron Dunkin, who do you think will be able to beat Adrian Brawner at 135 pounds? And Cameron Dunkin said, I've already got somebody that will beat him, that will break his face, and that is Terrence Bud Crawford out of Omaha, Nebraska. Now, Cameron Dunkin said when he originally told people that and was talking about it at the time, that everybody thought he was crazy. You know, Adrian Brawner was looking like the next Floyd Mayweather Jr., was beating up everybody at lightweight, looked like a tremendous fighter. And as time went out and we see how things played out, Cameron Dunkin was like, look, I was right. Now, and this is Cameron Dunkin saying it, I'm telling you the exact same thing about Terrence Crawford and Jaron Ennis. And he says right now that he believes that Jaron Ennis will beat Terrence Crawford if they fight tomorrow. And then he goes on and saying, and if you give Jaron Ennis 3 or more fights, then he's just going to smoke Terrence Crawford at that point in time. And he said, now look, people are always talking, and he pointed back to the Adrian Brawner situation and saying, yeah, people are going to think I'm wrong. People think I'm going to be crazy, that I'm crazy about this, but I'm not. I'm telling you that is what the case is. And he said, but look, Terrence Crawford is not going to be willing to fight. ERROL Spence is not going to be able to fight, is not going to be willing to fight Jaron Ennis at 147 pounds. And he said most likely that you will get a fight between Jaron Ennis and ERROL Spence Jr. at 154 pounds. Now, that is where I'm saying, okay, I think things are starting to kind of, we're starting to start understanding the conversations that's going on between Showtime and some of the things that the PBC is saying and what you see them doing for Jaron Ennis. And what I'm suspecting is going to happen is that one of the reasons that they're not that big on making the ERROL Spence Jr. versus Terrence Crawford fight is because they believe that they may have a mega fight down a little bit down the road at 154 pounds between Jaron Ennis and ERROL Spence Jr. So what is most likely going to happen, and this is what Cameron Dunkin said, that ERROL's going to move to 154 pounds, which is going to leave those belts at 147 pounds for Jaron Ennis to fight for and for Jaron Ennis to win. And then that mega fight, that big pay-per-view fight, would take place at 154 between ERROL Spence and Jaron Ennis. And I'm telling you, from what I'm looking, and I'm telling, you know, some people, you can disagree with me all you want. I've been watching boxing for a very long time, man, and I'm very good at recognizing legitimate top-notch talent. And I'm talking about from the time of Floyd Mayweather Jr. When I was watching Floyd Mayweather Jr. early in his career, it was evident to me that that dude was the best fighter in boxing. And when I would say that, I'd be like, Floyd Mayweather Jr. is the best fighter in boxing. I don't care what you guys is talking about with Oscar De La Hoya, because at the time, it was Roy Jones Jr. was the man, and then after Roy Jones Jr. lost, right? But it became, people would talk about Oscar De La Hoya being pound for pound #1. And I was saying at the time that you look at how that Oscar De La Hoya is a very, very solid fighter, a really good fighter, no doubt about it. But when you look at Oscar De La Hoya and you look at Floyd Mayweather Jr., I'm telling you, those are two entirely different talent levels of fighters. That kid, Floyd Mayweather Jr., is the best fighter in boxing. Now, I could not predict that he would become a gigantic pay-per-view star and things like that. But looking at the way that he fought, especially after he fought Diego Corrales, when he fought, when he fought Jose Luis Castillo, when he was beating Angel Manfredi, Janero Hernandez, guys like that, I was like, look, man, this really is the dude. And because if you look at how he fights, you can see the talent level. I believe that these guys are thinking the same thing, and I think the same thing about Jaron Ennis. Jaron Ennis is a different level of physical talent than other guys are in boxing, specifically Terrence Crawford. Now, Terrence Crawford is a very, 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 very high-level fighter. I right now have him as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. And please spare me the question about why I wouldn't have Jaron Ennis as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world right now. I'm saying that I don't have him there right now for the same reason that I don't have ERROL Spence Jr. there. They've been in one weight class. I think you should accomplish some things in a couple weight classes before you get there. And he's so young in his career that I'm just not willing to market him like that or talk about him like that. However, when you're looking at what's going to be taking place over the next year and a half, Terrence Crawford is 33, 34, is going to be 33, is 33 now, he's going to be 34 by the end of the year, 35 the year after that. Jaron Ennis is in his early 20s. I believe he's 24 years old. So by the time 2 years come by and he's 26 and Terrence Crawford is 36, 37 years old, dude, I'm telling you, it is a wrap on Terrence Crawford beating that kid. And quite honestly, looking at the style of those guys' fights right now, I believe it's a wrap on Terrence. It may be a wrap on Terrence Crawford fighting him right now. That is a different level of talent. That is a guy that pretty much, like Jaron Ennis said, anything Terrence Crawford can do, I can do better. You listen to how Jaron Ennis talks about Terrence Crawford, how he talks about Errol Spence Jr. or Canelo Alvarez, and the dude is thoroughly not impressed, man. But the thing that really stood out to me and stands out to me when I see him fight is it's at this stage, people are going to say, well, who has he fought, all of this and all of that. But look at how he fought the people that he fought and how he absolutely blows these guys out of the water like they do not belong in the ring with them. And those guys are B-level welterweight former champions and contenders that can go 12 rounds, 10, 12 rounds with the best of them, right? But when they got in the ring with Jaron Ennis, dude, Jaron Ennis played with him like food. It was like he could do whatever he wanted to do when he wanted to do it. They couldn't handle his speed. They couldn't handle his power. They were ridiculous mismatches. And when you put that level of talent up there and he has that complete a game, I'm telling you, this is a guy that could be that guy, that next Floyd Mayweather Jr. level talent. And to say Floyd Mayweather level talent, I'm telling you, a whole lot of people always brush off new guys. Like, that's not possible. There'll never be another Floyd. He's the great. That's just not how, it's just not how it works, man. You have great athletes that come along every once in a while. Really every 10 years, you get a really, really, really good athlete. Once every 30 years, you may have an athlete that's a level above that. Floyd Mayweather Jr. turned pro in 1996 in the early 2000s and all of that. And dude, he really did show that, but there was Roy Jones right there with him. And after that, I'm telling you, I do believe that it's Jaron Ennis. But that's my thoughts on the matter. Now, as far as what the PBC is doing, it's very clear that with the way that Steven Espinoza is talking about him and featuring him, giving him his own cards and headlining his own cards, and the way that they're doing and promoting pay-per-views on Showtime, that Jaron Ennis is going to be that next pay-per-view guy that they are going to start featuring and putting on pay-per-views. If it's not next year, the year after that. But when you have Jaron Ennis at 147, if ERROL moves up that has the ability to win those belts, and you've got Errol Spence Jr. at 154 pounds, you know that together makes a gigantic pay-per-view, and they could feel safe that they've done all the marketing necessary to make that a really, really big fight, where they feel like Terrence Crawford is kind of on the outside looking in and hadn't been really built correctly for that type of fight. But I'm telling you, I do believe that they're going to try to build Jaron Ennis over the next year, 2 years, to get him to the point where they can make that super matchup with Errol Spence Jr. that everybody in boxing would want to see. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.